crime and punishment. In a cramped garret, under the very roof of a tall St. Petersburg house, lived a young man named Rodion. He was handsome, clever, and desperately poor. For months he had been stewing in his tiny room, avoiding his landlady, and consumed by a monstrous idea. He believed that extraordinary men, the Napoleons of the world, had the right to transgress, to shed blood for a higher purpose, and he was desperate to prove to himself that he was one of them. He fled the confines of his room for the sweltering, crowded streets. The city was a chaotic symphony of smells and sounds that grated on his nerves. He felt utterly alone, a ghost drifting through the throng. Every face was a mask of indifference, every glance a judgment. This profound isolation only strengthened his resolve. If he was to be an outcast, it would be on his own terms. He made a rehearsal visit to the old pawnbroker, Alyona Ivanovna, a withered woman with sharp, mistrustful eyes. He offered a silver watch, a relic of his father, to gauge her habits. Her apartment was a fortress of clutter, and her greed was a foul, palpable thing. As she haggled over a few kopecks, the idea took deeper, more concrete root in his mind. He saw her not as a person, but as a louse, a parasite on the body of society. A letter from his mother arrived, shattering his fragile peace. It detailed his sister Dunya's engagement to a wealthy but despicable man, a sacrifice she was making to save him from poverty. A wave of fury and shame washed over Rodion. He would not allow it. The letter was the final push. His theory was no longer an abstraction. It was a necessity, a violent solution to an impossible problem. With a stolen axe hidden in a loop inside his coat and a heart like a stone, he returned. He distracted Alyona with a fake pledge, and as she turned her back, he brought the axe down. The act was clumsy, brutal, a sickening thud of metal against bone. He struck again and again, driven by a cold, terrifying frenzy. As he frantically searched for valuables, he heard a sound at the door. It was Lizaveta, the pawnbroker's gentle, simple-minded half-sister. She stood frozen in the doorway, her face a canvas of pure terror. His theory had not accounted for this, for the innocent. In a spasm of pure panic, he turned the axe on her, shattering his grand idea into a million pieces of sordid, pointless butchery. He stumbled back to his room, a ghost haunted by his own deed. He hid the few trinkets he had stolen under a loose stone in a courtyard and collapsed. Fever took him, and the world became a waking nightmare of disjointed images and sounds. Every knock on the door, every whisper in the hall, was a judgment, a prelude to his discovery. He awoke to find his friend, the boisterous and kind-hearted Razumikin, by his side. Razumikin had found him delirious and had been nursing him back to health. But his friend's kindness was a form of torture. Rodion was irritable and suspicious, twisting every word, convinced that everyone knew his secret and was toying with him before the final blow. He was summoned to the police station over a debt, but his guilt-ridden mind expected the worst. There he met Porfiry Petrovich, the examining magistrate. The detective was deceptively jovial, but his questions were like a spider's web, soft and yielding, yet inescapable. They danced around the subject of the murders, a psychological cat-and-mouse game that left Rodion feeling exposed and terrified. In a second meeting, Porfiry tightened the net. He brought up an article Rodion had written months ago, on crime, in which he had laid out his theory of the extraordinary man. Porfiry discussed the article with a chilling enthusiasm, dissecting Rodion's own ideas and using them as a weapon against him. He made it clear, without ever saying it directly, that he knew who the murderer was. Seeking escape, Rodion wandered into a tavern, where he met a drunken, disgraced official named Marmeladov. In a long, rambling monologue, Marmeladov confessed his sins, telling Rodion the heartbreaking story of his daughter Sonya, who had been forced into prostitution to support their starving family. He spoke of her goodness, her sacrifice, and her unwavering faith. Days later, Rodion witnessed Marmeladov's death, trampled by a carriage in the street. He helped carry the dying man home and, on impulse, gave all his money to the distraught widow. It was there, amidst the chaos and grief of the tiny, impoverished room, that he truly saw Sonya. Her face was thin and pale, but her clear blue eyes shone with an incredible strength and compassion. In the depths of his despair, he sought out Sonya. He went to her rented room, a large, bare space with a single chair. He was drawn to her not by lust, but by a desperate need for connection. He saw in her a fellow sufferer, a soul who had also transgressed, yet had somehow remained pure. He felt that she, and only she, could understand him. On his next visit, he commanded her to read from the New Testament. He pointed to the story of the raising of Lazarus. As Sonya's trembling voice filled the room, describing the miracle of resurrection, Rodion saw a glimmer of hope for his own dead soul. He, the murderer, and she, the sinner, were like Lazarus in the tomb, waiting for a voice to call them back to life. He could bear the secret no longer. He returned to Sonya and confessed everything, the weight of his crime crushing him. He tried to justify it with his theory, but the words sounded hollow and pathetic. She did not recoil in horror or judge him. Instead, she wept for him, for his lost soul, and her immense compassion was more devastating than any accusation. "Go at once, this very minute," she told him, her voice firm with conviction. "Stand at the crossroads, bow down, kiss the earth you have defiled, and then tell all the world, 'I am a murderer.' Accept your suffering, and redeem yourself by it. Then God will send you life again." She took a small cypress cross from her neck and placed it in his hand. In a daze, he went to Haymarket Square, the bustling heart of the city. He knelt in the dirt, overwhelmed with a strange, new feeling of release. He bowed down and kissed the filthy earth with a kind of joy. People laughed and jeered, calling him a drunkard, but their mockery could not touch him. It was the first step. He walked to the police station as if in a dream. The words came, a torrent of truth that washed away the lies and the suffocating pride. He found the police lieutenant and whispered, "It was I who killed the old pawnbroker and her sister Lizaveta with an axe and robbed them." A great wave of emptiness and relief washed over him. The battle was over. In the vast, frozen emptiness of Siberia, his new life began. He was sentenced to 8 years of hard labor. At first, his pride kept him aloof. The other convicts, common murderers and thieves, sensed his intellectual arrogance and despised him. His repentance was not yet real, but Sonya had followed him, and her quiet, constant presence was a promise he could not yet understand. After a long illness that brought him to the brink of death, something in him finally broke. One evening, sitting by the riverbank, he looked at Sonya, and for the first time he truly saw her. He fell at her feet and wept. In that moment, his pride dissolved, and his heart opened to love. His sentence was not yet over, but his renewal had begun. It was the start of a new story, the story of a man's gradual passage from one world to another.